everyone, welcome to Scare. Thank you for joining us today for our first wintertime training of 2025. I'm Taylor. I'm the Youth Programs Coordinator here at Scare. And even though this is the wintertime trainings, our first one is still focused on the theme of harvest since it is taking place in November. So our training today is focused on harvest health and nutrition. So overall, this part of the training is going to go over things like the cultural connections that take place during harvest, seasonal foods, and the benefits of eating seasonally, and some budget-friendly meals to get us through the holiday season. And this just for this portion, there also is going to be a recording added on from Marion, nutritionist at San Diego American Indian Health Center, and she's going to go over a nice, budget-friendly, healthy, and traditional recipe towards the end of this video. So the purpose of this training and focusing on things like health and nutrition is just to understand the connection between harvest and our health, especially nowadays, right? We're not growing our own food most of the time, maybe little bits and pieces, but we largely rely on the harvest of others, the grocery stores, and just seeing the connection that it can have nowadays with our health. We're going to go ahead and explore some traditional foods and seasonal produce. We are going to focus on how to create nutritious and low-cost meals, especially ones that are really good to feed the whole family, and also encourage self-sufficiency and community sharing. So first we'll dive into the meaning of harvest. So harvest is a symbol of abundance, gratitude, and renewal. Like I said, we might not rely on our own crops, maybe the way our ancestors did, but harvest really was a time of gathering crops, and that's what's going to help people get through the winters. So it's always been this symbol of, yes, abundance and gratitude for everything. Many native communities and different tribes will celebrate seasonal cycles through food as well, and that just ties into the seasonal eating. And then traditional harvesting also promotes respect for the land and sustainable practices. So not only did harvest provide for us, but it really was this connection to the relationship that we have with the land and the way that it helps us to provide for ourselves and to nourish us. So first, we'll focus a little bit on nutrition. And so some fresh, local, and seasonal foods have high nutritional value. So whenever you're looking at what you want to get, if you can do fresh, local tends to be better, and seasonal foods, it's going to have a lower impact on the environment, but then also just really high nutritional value. When we're eating things in season, it's going to have more of the nutrients that it's meant to have because it's thriving in the conditions that it's meant to grow in. Also, when you're trying to improve your nutrition, less processed foods are a good way to go. Processed foods usually have less of what we need. So the less processed foods that we have, it can help us obtain vitamins and minerals the way we need, that our body needs. And traditional ingredients are a great way to get balanced nutrition and avoid the processed foods. Right? So when we're talking about traditional ingredients, of course, a lot of it really did come from the land and was less processed the way that it is nowadays. And it also is great for getting a balanced nutrition. And so some of those traditional ingredients might look like beans, squash, corn, wild grains, and it helps us sustain our bodies and provide what we need. Something to keep in mind too when diving into nutrition is eating seasonally. So again, it really does connect us more to the earth and eating things when they're meant to be eaten and when they're meant to be grown. And of course, when we're eating seasonally, it really does have the highest nutritional value because we're not forcing these like fruits and vegetables to grow when they're not meant to grow. So when we do that, it might have a little less nutrition than when you eat them when they're in season. So here's just like a super short list of just like a few examples of what's available seasonally. So right now we're in the fall season. So some good produce to focus on might be things like pumpkins, squash, apples, corn, all of those are in season right now. And as we gear towards the winter, maybe eating things like beans or root vegetables like potatoes and carrots. In the spring, greens and berries are huge. And then in the summer, again, we have corn. Then we have things like peppers, tomatoes. And this isn't a full list. I am including this link too, and it leads us to eat the season. And specifically in California, it gives us the optimal like months to eat different types of produce. So I'll zoom in a little more. We have things like an apple, we can see what season it's really best in. There are some that are year round, like we see artichokes completely year round. Things like asparagus and avocados have a certain time frame. And this just helps us to see what's in season, during the time. So right now we are in November, so we can eat some apples, some artichokes, some beets, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. And I'm not going to go over every single one of these, but it does give a good idea of the different types of produce that's in season and when they're in season here in California. So it's a pretty extensive list. So feel free to go through this and learn a little more. Okay, so now we're going to jump over to some budget-friendly tips when we're like creating meals. So here's some tips just to save a little more. One of them is to buy in bulk. So especially if you're looking at long-lasting foods, things like dried beans, lentils, grains, things that are going to last for a long time. When you buy it in larger portions, think about if you go to places like Costco or Smart and Final, you can buy larger portions of it. It does save you money in the long term. And so then it's something that you can always have on hand whenever you need it. Another tip is to use seasonal produce. So not only does seasonal produce have like higher vitamins and minerals when they're in season, but also the prices are lower when they're in season because we don't have to import them. It's not taking the extra resources to grow them when they're out of season. So it's a great tip to save. That's why, if you ever notice, if you're shopping for things like strawberries, blueberries, yeah, in that spring and summertime is going to be the best time to buy it. And the prices will get a little lower. You might even see them start to get on sale because they don't last forever. But then the rest of the year, they will skyrocket in price and like be double the price that they usually are in season. All right, another tip is just to cook once and eat again. So make kind of a big batch of something and then reuse the ingredients in multiple meals. So for example, it could be something that you make as like a thick stew or soup one day. Maybe you add some pasta noodles to it the next day and just find new ways to reuse it and eat it over a longer period of time. And then it saves you the stress and the money of trying to create different meals throughout the whole week. Another great tip is to just find resources around you. There could be things like community gardens. And so if you have a community garden near you, you can always help out in the garden and learn more about how to grow food and also get to take some of the produce that's grown in there, right? And nourish your family that way. And of course, food shares, seeing what's around in San Diego County. There are a lot of options to be able to go to food shares and get whatever you need to uh, eat during the time. And the last one on this page, plan ahead. So instead of going to the store and just thinking, what am I going to get in that moment? Try to plan ahead, maybe some meals, and it'll help you avoid food waste because you'll actually use what you need, and it helps to limit impulse purchases. I know that if I go into a grocery store without having a plan or some type of shopping list, then I'll start to get creative, of course, and thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll use this week, or I'll use a can of this week. But if I don't plan it all together, I start to have things sitting in the pantry that I just don't use, and that would have been a few bucks saved at a time. All right, some additional tips to save. So buying produce is a huge thing. Whether it's fresh, dried, canned, or frozen, all of them are actually super nutritious options. I know that a lot of times people focus on the fresh produce, but especially when it's like canned and frozen, it's happening so fast after the harvest that it still contains a lot of the nutrition, all the vitamins, minerals that it normally has, so as it's fresh. And so buying produce is a huge thing if you're having, it's much more affordable to buy a lot of fruits and vegetables than sometimes some of the processed things. When you're making a whole meal out of it, it'll go a little further. Another tip is to buy the store brand. So if I'm looking for, a certain type of canned veggies or canned soup, I might go for the Walmart brand or go for the, Vaughn's or Albertsons brand instead of buying the big popular brands like Campbell's. You're going to save a lot of money just by buying the more like generic store brand. And then I really like this tip too, especially now that we're getting into the colder season, but make soups and casseroles because those are a couple easy to throw together meals that can feed a lot of people and it lasts for multiple meals a lot of times. And it's very, very minimal effort a lot of times. If you're making a soup, you can throw everything into one pot and just let it simmer for a while. Or same thing with a casserole. You throw the ingredients together and bake it. And it's really filling, it's nice and warm and cozy, and then it can feed multiple people at a time. Another good tip is to freeze your leftovers. So if you do have leftovers, you can always look up, based on the meal that you're making, if it like lasts well in the freezer or maybe some tips to store it in the freezer. But if you freeze your leftovers, it can actually keep the food good for months. And then if there's a day where you maybe don't have something on hand to cook, you at least have your leftovers to reheat and be able to eat. So that's a super good tip, and it helps prevent food from getting thrown away. And then a tip for stretching meals and making it feed more people and lasting longer. So you might have your main type of the dish, maybe it's some protein, some ground beef and some tomatoes, whatever it might be. But add things to it like pasta, potatoes, or rice, and that's going to help bulk the meal up. And again, it's going to be more filling, it's going to feel more satisfying, and also it'll be able to feed more people and last for more meals just by adding some simple ingredients like that. So these are just super quick tradition meals with like traditional ingredients. I'm not going to go into how to do this too much. You can always look up the recipes. But in general, for these, it comes out to being less than $2 a serving. So if you're comparing that to going out to eat for the whole family, um, this would be a more affordable option, spending less than $2 per person. And so again, these are using traditional ingredients. So you might see something like the Three Sisters stew, which has things like corn, beans, squash, onions, and some broth. Right, you throw that together in a pot, let it simmer, and it's healthy, nutritious, and again, feeds the whole family. Another great one for especially this time of year for harvest is a roasted root bowl. So some in-season things like carrots, potatoes, beets, and some herbs, and just throwing that all together, maybe baking it in the oven for a little bit, eating that all together in a little bowl. And if you're feeling extra creative, some berry cornmeal pancakes. So using some cornmeal, eggs, milk, and berries to whip together some cornmeal pancakes for the family. And then a wild rice salad. So it might look like something like wild rice paired with some veggies. It could be cooked or fresh. Um, and like some type of like dressing or vinaigrette. I did want to share this resource also for Eat Fresh. So, and I'll share all of the links in this training to the YouTube description box underneath the video. But Eat Fresh is a website that's like in partnership with CalFresh, and it just has a ton of different recipes. I'm not going to go through every single recipe, but I'll show you guys kind of how this website works. You can choose a meal type. So maybe you're looking for breakfast ideas or something that's a main dish or a side dish, whatever it might be. And let's see, let's look at a main dish. So now it's giving me some main dishes. You can always look through these other sections also if there's a certain kind of want to look, let's look at native and see what they have. So give some ideas for soups and stews. Let's go to recipes. Bean soup, warrior stew, walnut crusted rainbow trout, Three Sisters succotash. salmon with roasted fennel, a bison wild rice burger. Even if we take that off, we can still see so many options. And what I like too is that it gives like the time frame. I know that I don't like to spend too much time cooking. So especially if you're in a pinch or just don't have a ton of energy, it's great to see like what you're getting yourself into when you are committing to cooking a recipe. Let's see. Let's see what one of these might look like. Let's look at mushroom stuffed squash. And it tells you exactly what you need, about how many people it should serve, tells you all the ingredients, how it's prepared. And then, oh, I like this, it has pictures with the ingredients. You can see what it looks like at every stage. And because this is in partnership with CalFresh, a lot of these meals are just very affordable in comparison to maybe some of the more, you know, like expensive meals to be cooked at home. I like to, another one, cooking environment. And so if you have a limited kitchen with only certain things available, or maybe you have 20 minutes or less to make a meal, or maybe you don't have an option to cook in the kitchen. It tells you some things that don't need kitchen, whether it's certain salads and little snacks. And again, this link will be in the training. Just wanted to give a little tour of the website because I thought it was a pretty neat resource. And so this is my general, I guess, formula for creating a meal on the spot. And especially, I can't be bothered to think too much about meals because it's huge. So I just try to find some type of grain, a protein, and then a veggie to eat with it. So some examples could be something like wild rice for the grain, beans for protein, then some broccoli just to get some fiber and other nutrients. Maybe it's quinoa for the grain, chicken is the protein, and zucchini as a veggie, or something like pasta and some fish. And then maybe it's cooked, the pasta goes with some tomatoes, right? Cook a little tomato sauce with it or little, yeah, thing to go with it. And I did want to include like a little list too for some ideas because then I find it kind of nice to just, it's a low stakes way to choose what you're going to make for dinner sometimes. You can see, okay, well, here's some healthy grain options. Here are some healthier protein options. And then, of course, we've got the veggies. So it's almost like you can pick one from each category and decide how you want to throw it together. All right, next we're going to dive a little bit into culture and community and how that relates to harvest. So first, of course, I've mentioned this a couple times throughout the training already, but the Three Sisters stew. And so this one actually just has a super general recipe. What's nice is it's super simple to throw together. Again, it's something that like can be done in just one pot, on the stove and using ingredients that are really easy to have on hand. You might have these in your pantry. For some of these, you might have them in your pantry right now. So you could take a can of black beans, or pinto beans or kidney beans, any kind of beans that you want. Do 1 can of corn, and then a cup of diced squash. So right now, things like butternut squash and acorn squash are in season. During like the summertime, it might be like zucchini or yellow squash, but throwing something like that in there. And then some things to flavor it up, like onion and garlic, and then some type of veggie broth or chicken broth, whatever your desire is, to give a little more flavor to the stew. And like I said, this all comes together in one pot where you would just saute the onion in a pot on medium heat. Once that is cooked for a little bit, it gets a little clear, add some garlic in there. And then once that starts to get a little cooked, then you can go ahead and just add the beans, corn, squash, and broth. And then that's it. You just let it heat up and simmer until everything's cooked through. And especially the beans and the corn will be in there real quick, but the squash might take a little longer depending on what squash you have to cook. So just checking that to make sure it's cooked all the way through. And so the Three Sisters are such a big part of like traditional meals. I feel like that's why it's one that's always referenced when we're talking about traditional meals. And so I wanted to go over the significance of the Three Sisters. So if you're not aware, the three sisters are what they call corn, beans, and squash. So those three crops are companion plants, which means that they historically have been planted together and it kind of they all benefit each other when they're growing together. So the beans, when they're growing, provide certain nutrients to the soil that help, the corn or the squash grow, and maybe they protect the other crops in certain ways. So they all thrive when they are growing together. And I always like how it's described like this, but they grow together like a family when they're planted together. They protect each other and nourish each other. And so a lot of different tribes have stories about the three sisters, and the stories might be a little bit different, but in general, they all highlight uh, the traits like balance, cooperation, and nourishment. And then I think it's really important to keep some traditional meals in mind, even if it's maybe not ones that you grew up cooking. Um, but learning to cook traditional meals can help you connect to your own culture. It can also just build relationships in the family and helps the culture continue. So also wanted to dive into community and self-sufficiency. I think this is great because the more that we can learn to do things ourselves, the more connected we'll be to the whole process. We're going to be more connected to our food, maybe more connected to the earth. And also, I think it's important to highlight community in this because we can't do any of this by ourselves. That's why places like Scare exist. We don't want anyone to have to do it by themselves. But some tips for just increasing community and self-sufficiency, even though we're not, I know for me, I can't speak on everyone. I am probably not ever going to be completely self-sufficient with growing food and not relying on grocery stores. That's not my reality. But learn to grow little bits and pieces can be really gratifying and feel really good. And then helps connect me to what I'm eating. So some options could be to just grow your own food items or trade food items with others. And I guess I say food items because it doesn't have to be necessarily like crops and produce, but maybe if you bake bread, you can bake some bread, share with other people, or if there's something that you make, and it just builds the community and again helps others to have something that you might have on hand at that time, and it comes back around. It's also really important to share excess produce and excess food with other people, and it'll help reduce food waste. So if you realize you make a huge portion of a meal or have a ton of zucchini that you grew, maybe you know already that you might not be able to use all of it. So instead of having it go to waste, just sharing it with others, and that gives them more food to eat, gives them a meal to eat, and also it just builds a close relationship between you and the others. I mentioned community gardens earlier. I'm going to go ahead and mention it again because it is a great way to just meet other people, learn more about growing different fruits and vegetables in the garden, and it lets you participate also while getting some of those produce back. It's also super important to teach youth how to prepare the traditional foods, whatever that means to you, whatever your traditional foods are. Again, just keeping the traditions going, keeping the culture going, is huge. And it can also just help to be a time for you to become closer and bond with the kids that you have. And then all of this between community and if you're trying to grow things yourself, it really just helps to gain more appreciation of the earth and the process of growing produce. I think it can be easy to take for granted when we're able to just go to the store and pick up. But then when we try to do any of it on our own, we realize, hey, there's a lot of love and a lot of labor that goes into this. And it just helps you appreciate what you have on hand a little more. So I know that people have different resources in different space. I myself am in a one bedroom apartment. So I did want to give some little tips for something like small scale gardening because you don't have to have a whole plot of land to get into trying to grow something. So here's just a few of them. I know that there's probably other tips online that you guys can dive into, but some small scale gardening, it could be something like regrowing lettuce, green onions, and carrot tops. If I go to the grocery store and buy some, like I said, either lettuce, green onions, or carrot tops or carrots, I can actually put those in some water, maybe in like a Tupperware or a bowl or something. If I put it in some water, it will actually start to regrow a little bit. It won't regrow forever, but you might be able to get a few more leaves of lettuce on there. The green onions are really easy. Put maybe like an inch of the bottom part of a green onion where it's white and with its roots. Put it in a little cup with some water. Those will start sprouting super fast, and then you just automatically have another set of green onions. And similar thing with carrot tops. Um, you can you have the picture there. You can trim about like an inch of the top of a carrot and put that in some water, and those carrot tops will actually start growing. What's really cool is even though we're not getting the whole carrot, those carrot tops are a great herb to cook with. People make pesto out of it. Maybe you'll top your salads with it, or just find new ways to eat and cook with it. And it's something that you can do just maybe on your kitchen counter or near a windowsill or anything like that. You can also grow herbs near a window. So you can get a small little pot, put it near a windowsill, grow things like basil, um, rosemary, thyme, and kind of play around to see what works best in like the environment that you're in. But then you'll at least have access to some small things to cook with and spice up your cooking. If you have maybe a small balcony or space outside, little patio, vertical gardenings are a really good option for small spaces. I tried this for the first time this past year, and it was actually super cool. So it's like these tiered planters that stack on top of each other. So you can just have it be a few planters tall. This one happens to be very tall, but it's great for planting a lot of different things. You can plant different types of peas or beans on some of them. You can plant beets, plant herbs. Strawberries are a great one for these little planters. And again, if you're doing the research, putting the love into it, you'll actually be able to grow little bits of your own produce. So super neat thing to try. And also nowadays they also have a lot of varieties that are great for small spaces. So now they actually have these dwarf tomato plants that they can grow on a table. They only get to about 1 foot tall, and you can keep it outside on the table, maybe even just next to a windowsill inside, and it will actually grow a good amount of tomatoes. So you don't have to have a whole plot of land just to get your foot in the door for a little bit of gardening. I did want to start to wrap up with this quote here. Food is our medicine, our culture, and our connection to the earth. And like I said, this is not the end of the video. There is going to be a great recipe demonstration by Marion from San Diego American Indian Health. And so please stay tuned for that. Any of the links that I had mentioned in this workshop will be in the YouTube description box below, along with the workshop survey, which is important for you guys to fill out in order to receive work participation hours for tribal TANF with your caseworker's approval. So I hope you enjoyed this workshop so far, and please enjoy the food demonstration by Marion. Have a great day.
My name is Marian McIntosh. I'm the nutritionist from San Diego American Indian Health Centers. Today I have a recipe for you guys that I really enjoy and my manager Nicole really loves. It's a corn, blueberry, and wild rice salad. The salad is really great actually. It has wild rice, which is Native American, one of traditional Native American, corn as well, and blueberries. So basically, we're having the ingredients, anything that is grown from the earth, we're going to have those today. For the recipe, it's actually very simple. It also is very cost efficient. I buy the rice that you can just heat for like 2.5 minutes and it's ready to go. This rice is actually pretty cheap. It's about like maybe like $1.49. I also have blueberries here. When you're trying to save on a budget, I always say like you can buy canned, you can buy frozen, that's okay. The only thing with frozen is you want to make sure when you look at the ingredients, it only has the fruit. No added sugar, no added nothing. It just has to have the fruit by itself. It's also a lot more budget friendly versus if you were to buy fresh blueberries. When it comes to canned foods, so for example, I have canned corn here. I just buy the one that says no salt added. If I were to buy maybe like green beans, same thing. I just want to make sure that the ingredient only has the green beans. Another trick to save on a budget is to make sure that you buy the store brand. So for example, I believe there's one called One Value, that's a store brand, and it's typically a lot cheaper than if, like, for example, you were to buy like the Campbell's brand. So that's just one tip I can give, a couple of tips I can give you to save on the budget. So this recipe is very, very easy. I'm going to grab my corn here, and I'm going to stir it in a bowl. I'm going to grab my blueberries. I'm going to go ahead and grab one small onion that I've added here to the bowl. Cucumber. I need a little bit more coffee, obviously. Now I'm going to add the red onion. And then I have here 1/4 of a cup of cilantro, chopped. So if you notice, I'll put the camera. If you notice, I'm trying to create a little bit of a rainbow with the meal. That's what you want with your nutrition. You want to create a little bit of a rainbow. You want to get all the nutrients that you can. You want to mix it. I don't know if the camera can see that. Hopefully you can catch that, but that's the purpose of it. And now we're going to add our wild rice. Mix. Now, for your dressing, you can even make your dressings at home. One of the things I like to say is if you have lime juice, salt, and olive oil, and maybe some honey, you can make magic happen. Those are Nicole's famous words, by the way, magic happen, so now I'm just copying her. But you can make magic happen as long as you have olive oil in the house, a little bit of salt, and lime juice. That's another great way to save on a budget. That way you don't have to worry about purchasing a new dressing. You can just even make that at home. Typically it's just olive oil, lime juice, some salt, and then maybe some honey, and then you can start working around other ingredients onto the dressing. I'm going to set aside the salad for now, and we're going to focus on the dressing. So for this dressing, we're going to do 4 tablespoons of olive oil. We're going to do 4 tablespoons of lime juice right here. I'm going to add that in. I'm going to mix it in just a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and add, this is about 2 tablespoons of honey. If you don't have honey, you can also use maple syrup. I didn't think this through. If you're at home, you can't see this, but I'm kind of struggling with the honey, so I'm just going to switch up some things. But we're going to mix it. One of my favorite seasonings is cumin, so we're going to add a ½ teaspoon of cumin. And lastly, we're going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt. Just going to blend it in really, really well. Now, if you don't have a whisk at home, you can use a fork, or even if you have like a little screw top jar, you can go ahead and whisk it together and just like close the top and then just whisk together that way to make the dressing. All right. And everyone's favorite ingredient, we're going to add a ½ teaspoon of salt. We're going to whisk away. Okay. Mix it, add it on different sides of the salad. I don't like to add my dressing in the middle all the time. I want it to be all around, so that way even if you get one handful on one side of the bowl, you can always have a piece of everything. corn, blueberry, and wild rice salad. Like I said, a lot of these ingredients you can just get frozen or canned. You can get the store brand version, and that will help when it comes to saving on a budget. One of the other things about saving on a budget is always look at what you have in your own cabinet, in your own pantry. You can do a lot of great ingredients with the things you already have. For example, last month we made vegetable chili. We had a lot of the ingredients already in our pantry, so I didn't really have to buy a lot of groceries. I just had to buy maybe like some green bell peppers and some onions, and I think one more can of canned tomatoes. So I really did save. So always make sure you have gone through your pantry and make sure that you've already looked at what you really do need and what you don't need. Another great tip about that is, following along that, is that, for example, you can do soup, which therefore you have a meal for longer in the week. Or you can even do a casserole, and that can also be another meal throughout the week. So that way you can save on a budget. All right, well that's the recipe, you guys. Anybody hungry? Yes? Okay, good. I'm glad you guys are hungry. Any questions for me about the recipe, or any questions about tips on eating on a budget?
I have a question about the lime. So should it be fresh limes, or you know how they have like the little lime, like juices already? Does that work?
I like the lime juice just because that way I don't have to go to the store every other week purchasing fresh limes. The lime juice is about like $1.80. One fresh lime is about almost 80 cents each. So you can do either or, just whatever you think would be best for your cost.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Now, I will say, if you are going to do that, don't do lime juice from the store, the jar. Don't buy that one when it comes to like using, like if you were to cook fish, get the real lime. Or like, for example, with ceviche or aguachiles, you want to use the real fresh lime. Something like a salad, a quick, easy salad, that should be easy to use a little box.